Okay, today we're going to talk about our new practice to document where the tube is on the x-ray. We're going to do this at the beginning of every shift and after every x-ray that's taken on your shift. So when you bring up the x-ray on PACS, if you don't know how to do that, get with a charge or somebody to show you. You'll have your view here. We're going to look at, if we right click on the image, you have these options to change things like window view will make it lighter or darker, zoom, can zoom it in, pan, kind of moves it around if you need to move it around, and then ruler, which is one of the key things we're going to use here. Also down here under image, you can make, if you want to bring up the bony structures to be more prominent, you can switch the view in this manner, which makes it easier to find the tubes, locate them. So what we're going to do is first we're going to look at the film and we're going to see where the x-ray falls on the thoracic vertebra column. And we're not going to use rib. When we talk about the tube, wanting the tube to be between T2 and T3, that refers to the thoracic vertebra, not the rib itself. And although we know the rib connects to that vertebra, people frequently use the ribs assuming it's the same distance on the chest. And the reason it isn't is when they shoot the x-ray, if they don't shoot the x-ray at an exact 90-degree angle, because the ribs are more of a plane because they wrap around and form like a plane, when you change the angle of the x-ray to how the position of the patient is, it'll make the ribs look like they're rotated higher or lower in the chest. If you're just looking at the rib placement, it might, in using the rib as a reference, it might lead you to believe that the tube is at the second rib when it really is at the third or the fourth or the fifth or whatever. So we're going to use a thoracic vertebra because they're a ball structure. So when you rotate, if they shoot it where it's not at 90 degrees, the ball just rotates on the same axis and it stays in the same spot. So it doesn't change the image of where the tube is in relation to the chest for that reason. So first we're going to find out where this tube is. So you find the first rib and you can connect it to T1, and this will be the hardest part of this job, is trying to find where T1 is. It's sometimes hard to find the difference between C7 and T1, but that's one way you find the first rib, connect it to the vertebra, that's T1. If you want to double check yourself, you can come down to the floating rib, which is 12, which on this kit it doesn't appear very well, it's right here, and count your way back up to 12 to verify that. So we're going to find 1. We're going to see here, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3 to where the tube hits. And we see here that the tube is hitting right at the edge of the third vertebra, which is right here. So we're going to document that in our airway tab under comments, airway comments, we're going to put in tube at T, in this case, tip of T2, 1, 2, no, sorry, 1, 2, tip of T3. And you can get highly, you can make it tip of T3, middle of T3, end of T3, but minimally we want you to put at T3 or wherever it sits. Then next you're gonna pull up your ruler here and you're gonna measure that tip of that tube. How far is it until it's at the top of T1? And it's going to show you in millimeters, so you move the decimal over. So this right here is 1.7 centimeters. So that means the tube has 1.7 centimeters before it should be located at the top of T1, which everybody agrees is too high. Then after that, you're going to come and measure the tube and see how far do you have until it gets to the end of T4, which is about right here. So you got T1, T2, T3, and T4 is right in here, a little difficult to see for sure, but it's right about that area. And you see 1.4 centimeters till it gets to the point of T4. So we're documenting those 3 points every shift and after every x-ray. And the point of that is when we shoot our x-rays in a midline neutral position, the tube is going to sit in a certain position in the chest. And just because that tube is in that position when the x-ray is shot doesn't mean the tube stays in that position through all movement of the patient. So by shooting every x-ray in the neutral position, we'll get a good feel for where the tube will be at neutral. So when we move the head to the right or the left, we know that's going to pull the tube up from the neutral position. When the chin is down, it's going to push the tube in from the neutral position. And when the head is pulled up off the chest, it's going to pull that tube up from the neutral position. So knowing that, if the tube is sitting at, let's say it's sitting at the tip of T2 here in the neutral position, and you measure and you got a 1/2 centimeter before you're at T1, that kid might be in danger of extubating should we pull his head up after we shoot the x-ray, or we put a shoulder roll in him, or we put a shoulder roll and we turn his head to the left. It's going to change the tube position, and you're already closer than you need to be in relation to it being too deep. So the goal here long term is, by measuring those distances, eventually get to put the tube where they're in the equally between those points, where they're equally below the top of T1 and they're equally above the bottom of T4, and that should give you the most likelihood of, with head moving, the tube won't be too deep and it won't be too high. Now we're not going to say, if you come in here and you measure this and it's like 1 centimeter to T4 and 3 centimeters to T1, we're not suggesting go to the physician and say, hey, let's retape this tube and move it. We're just having you document and show that, so if they do want to move it, you'll have a really good idea of what to move it to. So let's find out. Let's say we're sitting here and the doctor on this x-ray, he wants the tube to be moved to the bottom of T1. I'm just making this up so I can show you this on the x-ray. How we're going to suggest that distance or verify what he's saying the distance should be is accurate or close to being right is we're going to measure this. We're going to take, he wants to move it to the bottom of T1, so I go up to T1 and I'm going to say, in the neutral position, I need to move it by 1 centimeter to get it at that spot in the neutral position. Okay, so this measuring tool is really useful and helpful on, you know, moving tubes in accurate increments. Okay, if you have any questions, you can contact me or Charge or supervisors.